now in year number 4. It's a Yank on the Footy with Craig Wessels. Let's all sit back and enjoy a chat about the greatest game on the face of the earth. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 245 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels, coming to you from Sandusky, Ohio, and thanks for checking out the episode. This is the 4th episode in my series on why I truly believe that American NFL fans would love the AFL. In just a moment, I'm going to be joined by David Evan Smith, a mad footy fan. He's an avid NFL fan as well, a member of the Browns Backers in Melbourne, and we're going to talk about how it is that we can encourage NFL fans here in the States to check out this fantastic game. Now, today's club of the episode are the Ormond Monders. The club was founded back in 1931, and based upon my math skills, looking through their website, they've captured 47 premierships across all of their different teams at the different levels throughout their history. And their senior side opens up their fixture in round 2 this year. They have a bye week in round 1 on 22 April, squaring off with the Hampton Rovers at the Boss James Reserve. Now, this is a club that has a very storied history of sending players to the VFL and then into the AFL as well. The alumni of this club include 1964 Melbourne Premiership player Neil Crompton, 5-time VFL Premiership winner Laurie Mithen, and a guy many of you have probably heard of before. And this was Max Gawn. And I believe this is actually where Max Gawn was cloned, because if you've listened to previous episodes, I've argued that there is more than one Max Gawn on the ground because he's everywhere. I want to wish Ormond the absolute best going into 2023 and hope that they have a fantastic season. Now, before we jump into my chat with David, I did want to take a moment and share some news from the USAFL here in the United States. And you can find all about them at usafl.com. Last evening, I ran across a post on my social media announcing the return of the local, if you want to call it that, USAFL team, the Cleveland Cannons. And the Cannons had gone dormant for a couple of years, but they are back, and they are going to begin training here in a couple of weeks. Looking forward to getting up to Cleveland and having the opportunity to watch them, hoping to engage with some of the people from the club on the podcast here pretty soon. So if you're in the Ohio area and you've ever had the inkling of wanting to try playing footy, well, you've got several clubs. You've got the Dockers down in Cincinnati, you got the Cats in Columbus, and you've got the Cannons in Cleveland now. So check them out. So let's go ahead and jump into my chat with David Evan Smith, and we're going to try to convince more NFL fans why they should check out the AFL, because I think they'd love it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my guest for this episode, another one where we're talking about just how we can get the AFL to make a stronger head road into the United States of America, which I think is, in many ways an untapped market for them. I am thrilled to be welcoming not only a Geelong Cat supporter, but he's also a Cleveland Browns supporter, which, if those of you who don't know, we'll talk about that in a moment. I am absolutely thrilled to welcome Dave Evan Smith to the podcast. Dave, thanks for getting up this morning, sir, and coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks for having me, mate. It's nice to finally have a chat with you. We've chatted enough quietly on Twitter, but it's nice to actually have a chat.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I am thrilled to be chatting with you. This has been a long time coming, and I just I've just been sitting here knowing that I've converted one person officially to becoming a footy fan, and they became an Essendon supporter. So I'm not sure if that's a victory or not. But and again, that's not, if you're an Essendon supporter, that's with tongue in cheek. That's completely with jest. But because he's also a Pittsburgh Steelers fan too. So yeah.
Oh no.
And and I don't know if you follow college football, but he's a University of Michigan fan, and I follow Ohio State. So yeah, but he's my boss, so there's that.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. No, you've got to play nicely there. Just going to say that is the trifecta of all things. I'm surprised you didn't follow Richmond being the black and yellow thing.
I wondered that also. I really did. And having had the recent success that they did once when he made the decision to become a supporter, yeah, I'm really surprised he didn't go that route. So yeah. So
thankful.
You are an NFL fan, and you might be the one that's going back the furthest that I have had a chance to talk with, because it says, when you mentioned him, you've been a Browns fan since 1988.
Yep,
and also following the Cleveland Indians, now the Guardians. And I have to ask, how did you become a Cleveland sports fan? How did you become a sports fan in the United States in 1988 when some of the opportunities to watch games here were extraordinarily limited? And then how did you decide? I don't want to say settle on Cleveland, but how did you decide on Cleveland?
Well, so it all goes back to my mum, actually. So post World War II, probably leading into the early 50s, there was an international pen pal program, and she ended up becoming pen pals with a lady named Joanne, who we affectionately refer to as Auntie Joanne. And they would swap letters, as it was back in the old day, via sea mail or air mail back in the 50s and 60s through their primary school and very early teenage years. And as with teenagers, you drift off, you go off and do things. But there was also an affiliation with that family and my mother's family, was that essentially both grandfathers for the grandchildren, both fathers were in the Air Force. One of them is actually quite a famous Ohioan, is Bill Wynn. He's got there's a book about him. There's been a number of things. I understand that there's a little bit of a TV show / movie in the making about his feats, and he rescued a little dog on an island.
Smokey and the War Dog.
Smokey and the War Dog, that's it,
yes.
Yep. And my late grandfather was an electrical engineer with the Air Force, and he worked around the world, including some stuff in San Diego that we believe that is still classified, for whatever that means. They lost contact, and in about somewhere between 1986 and 1989, a letter was found. Joanne sent it to my now late grandparents' house. They still lived in that same house, and Mum and Auntie Joanne have been writing and calling each other every week since.
Okay.
She had 3 girls. I'm one of 3 boys. I'm the oldest of 3 boys. She obviously, through the conversations of us all growing up, we were all sports mad. I grew up playing football, cricket, and field hockey, which is massive in Australia because we don't get ice.
Right.
We get it in our drinks, but not in anything else. Not in large enough sheets. And so she used to send us for our birthdays and Christmas Cleveland sports stuff.
Okay.
Cleveland Browns and Cleveland Indians, a little bit of Cavs gear, because she just thought it was quick and easy. And so I have full baseball card sets still at Mum and Dad's place of like the somewhere between 87 and 89 Indians, like Brooke Jacoby. I've got a card of Brooke Jacoby. Through that, and then obviously the Browns, and I just loved NFL because we did used to get the Super Bowl on our free-to-air television every year, and you'd always love watching it because it's always been a spectacle. And that was about the time of Bernie coming to Cleveland, that 88-89 season.
Coming back because he's from Northeast Ohio. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, yeah. So we didn't get any of that sort of necessarily that background story of him being, and we didn't have college football back then. It wasn't until we got cable television or satellite television that we used to get the college football, which is what I used to follow it like a madman. Both of them, the NFL and the college. And so and from that we were kind of landed on Cleveland because we got all their gear and we supported them, and obviously they were winning at that stage. There was obviously the drive and all those sorts of things that went wrong with Mr. Elway, which we've all still got heartbreak and trauma about. And then there was Bill and Vinny Testaverde coming through as that Art Modell complete mess up, and then the club went. I remember coming home from university that day, and Mum said, "You're not going to believe this." I said, "What?" She goes, and she got quite into it as well because she saw how much we enjoyed it. And at that stage, I was playing here in Australia. We had a junior league and a senior league, and I was transitioning from in age brackets, how we have it set up, much like the under-19 football, Australian rules football through to seniors. And she goes, "You're not going to believe this, but Modell has moved the team moved the team to Baltimore." And I said, there is no way they're going back to Baltimore. Baltimore, the Midnight Runners, they ran out of Baltimore and ended up in Indianapolis way back when.
84.
And 84, there you go.
Yep.
And she goes, no, they're gone. And then obviously we kept in contact with Joanne and we're getting newspaper articles and stories about it. Plus you're hearing it in the Australian media as the sort of started to open up. You're starting to look at the internet just starting and all those sorts of things. So we were finding out about the fight by the Cleveland Browns fans and saying, no, we're an original team. We need to keep our history. We need to keep our colours. We need to keep what logo we have. Right. We've got to keep the core of Cleveland there. They've got to have a new team. Let them go, And I was never enamoured with the Ratbirds.
Good.
The team I ended up playing for in the seniors here in Australia happened to be the Southeastern Steelers, as it would happen, of course. So in those years of no Browns, it was a half-hearted support of the Steelers, only because I was wearing the colours whilst I was playing as a middle linebacker and a little bit of an edge rusher.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I've been Browns through and through. And as for the Indians, I've always loved baseball. But we were getting I was getting newspaper articles back then when Major League was being filmed, and I had Indians hats of half a dozen varietals. As I said before, all the card collection. So just having all that, and then when we got what was called Foxtel here,
right,
we were able to get games almost on a daily basis, along with the NBA and then the NFL and NCAA. So it was I'm just a sports junkie. I can't help myself.
Okay, well, I'm reading I'm reading an article on my and I just bookmarked it on my notes here about Bill Wynn and Smokey the Word Dog. And Bill Wynn, and this was an article from about 4.5 years ago. So he was 96. I don't know if he is still around.
He passed away. He passed away a couple of years ago.
Because that's he lived in Mansfield, which is about an hour's drive south of where I am right now.
Yep.
So
okay.
I mean he's in fact Mansfield is where the old prison was where they filmed Shawshank Redemption.
Oh wow. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yep.
That one I didn't know. Yeah.
And every year they have a massive metal music concert that lasts for an entire weekend called Incarceration. It's like a big concert and tattoo extravaganza kind of thing. Yes.
Wow. That's
haven't been yet, but since I do enjoy that type of music, I'd love to get there at some time. And just before we move back to the Browns, I do have to say that, as far as the Ratbirds, as you mentioned there, if my first wife, because I was married once before also, you might have seen my first wife, house fell on her, legs rolled up, Dorothy got her shoes. Yeah.
Lucky find.
Yeah. If she owned an NFL team, I would sit in the owner's box with her family to cheer against the Ravens. That's how much I loathe them. I hate the Ravens. Hate them. Yeah.
Yep.
If you're in Baltimore, I don't care. I hate your team.
Yep. I always took a little wry smile every now and again when he took his helmet off and he had his Cleveland Browns headband on. And
Steve Everett.
Steve Everett, you know, he will never enter the Hall of Fame or anything like that. But to us, I think as Browns fans, he did that little quiet protest, a little nod to us all, knowing that it wasn't right. Right. And forever will be a very fond memory of that horrible franchise.
Yeah. And the thing is that 2 years after they leave, they win the Super Bowl. It's crushing. It's crushing.
Yeah, you can almost be physically ill as a result of that.
And I've made this analogy, and again, it's not taking for those of you who don't follow the NFL very much, being a Cleveland Browns fan, the way I can equate it to footy is being a St. Kilda supporter with even more heartbreak.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. St. Kilda or Melbourne in the 80s, 90s time frame.
Yeah.
Bottom of the rung, wooden spoons, as we say in AFL. potentially great prospects with number one draft picks plenty, and just never, ever locking gear and working in unison, and always having coaching problems, from, St Kilda having Tim Watson to Malcolm Blight that walked out, sort of mid-training session to, through to what happened last year.
Yeah, it is just, it's frustrating. And I just, and you looked at what happened with Bratton and Rutten at the end of last year, and Essendon makes their move, and then St Kilda says, "Hold my beer. Let's see if we can top what you guys did there."
yeah. Absolute chaos. Chaos.
So, and again, if you are an NFL fan and you've not watched footy, and you're a Geelong supporter, and our club won the premiership last year. We won the AFL's Super Bowl, if you will.
Absolutely. And convincingly.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And maybe it could happen again this year, possibly, knock on wood. But, I just got doing my Cats preview. They've still got a very talented side. We'll see what happens. But if you were to describe the AFL to somebody who has not watched it before, or has not watched it consistently, how would you describe it?
360-degree action-packed, fast-running, hard-hitting, high-marking. People call it catching, obviously, in the US and North America as a whole, but we call it a mark. High-marking, high-scoring, explosive sport. No pads. They hit at full speed. Yeah, that's it. It's 360 degrees.
And the ground is close to 3 times the size, at least, of an NFL field. It's just absolutely massive.
Yep, shaped like a giant egg, essentially, or they call it an oval, and it probably is for most parts. But probably about 3 times the size of an NFL field from length to length, because obviously we have the two 50s, and there's about a 50 in the middle. 50 meters, that is. And when you watch some of these guys who are built like tight ends and linebackers kicking a football 50-plus meters, which I think, what does that equate to, about
50 meters yards? 50 meters would be about 55 yards, 56 yards. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're talking, these blokes grow up, and myself included, grow up kicking a football from the age of 3 or 4, much like, a quarterback or a shortstop or a catcher grows up throwing a baseball or football. So you're essentially watching a high-quality punter kick the ball every time he kicks the ball.
And putting it on a dime for the most part.
Absolutely, yeah. Pinpoint accuracy.
Yeah.
And if they can kick it through, and from memory, the main 2 big sticks, the goal posts, I think from memory, they're close to 15 metres up from ground to point. And quite often they'll go over the top of them, as in they'll soar above the upright, not even the upright, soar through them.
Or sometimes they'll literally go over the post, as happened to Richmond last year. Which I actually had during my Richmond preview, and I don't want to share that because I want you to go listen to the Richmond preview. The guest I had on, I had a brilliant idea, and they said that I don't know why the league hasn't thought of it yet. They absolutely should have done it. I said, why don't they have some sort of not necessarily a laser, but some sort of a light that is attached to the top where you can see where the ball is breaking that light stream above the post.
Correct.
Why can't you have that? And I don't think anybody has ever mentioned that before.
No. So, the other one that has been mentioned is something along the lines of, because it would not interfere with, I suppose, wind and whatever else, and wouldn't be any trouble, but essentially putting a giant car aerial in the centre, or maybe on the inside half of the top of the goal post. Yeah. So that if it hits, it would have an electrical current, and then obviously as it wobbles, it would break the current, and you'd know that it's gone over the wrong thing. I mean, there's been 1,000 ideas, but none of them have ever got off the ground.
Yeah. Well, you know what I mean? Which in this case, the reason for doing it is they would have to, in fact, get off the ground and go up about 20 meters or so.
Correct. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So, I've given up. I haven't watched baseball now in 3 years, and I was a much bigger baseball fan than I was a gridiron fan. But I'm so disillusioned with what Major League Baseball has done over the last few years. The fact that there's no salary cap, the fact that the Houston Astros players who cheated are not working the stands selling popcorn and hot dogs instead of getting multi-million-dollar contracts is to me an absolute travesty.
And championship rings.
Yes. Yeah.
Look, I'm the same. I've become probably since 16 when we lost the World Series.
Cubs,
I've become more of to the Cubs. Yeah, I've become more of a passive watcher, and then I wasn't enamored with the name change for whatever however anyone feels about that. That's everyone's individual right to feel that sort of situation. I wasn't enamored with it. I wasn't enamored with the logo they came up with or any of that sort of stuff. I thought some of the fan drawings were way better.
Yeah. I wish we would have gone with the spiders. Because they used to be the spiders.
Way back when, yeah.
The
Cleveland Spiders. But you can't help but love Jose and
right.
And Stephen
Absolutely.
Kwan. They're a young bunch of kids who are super exciting to watch. And Tito is just such a great human being and a great manager. You can't help but love them. And you're right, cutting out the shift, reducing pitching times, and the new versions of what a balk is and what a balk isn't. It's like,
so
give me a break. Let them play baseball.
For those of you who are in Australia who may not watch a lot of baseball, when he's talking about the shift, I've equated it to cricket, where if you have figured out when you're bowling it, if you're able to bowl a batter in a certain place in terms of where they're going to hit it, that they're going to consistently, more often than not, they hit the ball in a certain direction if the ball is bowled to a certain spot. So you may overload your defenders to that direction to get them to catch the ball. Major League Baseball has now said, instead of being able to move like an extra infielder over to the side where the hitters might be hit the ball on a more consistent basis, they can no longer do that. So they're basically telling the defensive team, we're going to limit your ability to get the other team out. And this is a game that for the last several years has tried to figure out ways, how do we speed up the game? And now they're going to allow players who literally you could hold a gun to their head and say, hit the ball the other direction, and they can't do it. They can't do it. No. Yeah. I mean, Rod Carew, who played back in the 70s, actually 60s, 70s, 80s, who was just a magician. Tony Gwynn is rolling over in his grave, not, with people not being able to hit the ball the other direction. It's a joke. It's a joke. And it's one of the reasons why I missed the game that I love, but this is not the game that I loved, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's where, I mean, obviously the heartbreak of 16 was enough. I mean, 17 was a bit of a lackluster year.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. With all these changes, like that's trying to speed up. And this is why the guys are getting injured. This is why the pitchers are getting injured. They don't get a chance to an extra 10 or 15 seconds to sort of
catch your breath,
center themselves, get them around, catch your breath. Exactly right. They're running on fumes by about the fifth inning. So yeah.
And if you are an American sports fan, and if you're disgruntled with baseball, have we got a game for you? Because guess what? This, you can literally, it's like if you're building a house out of Legos, and you can unhitch a section of Legos and lift that part of the house out of there and drop footy right in there as a new wall, because it fits in the time-wise great, because the season begins in mid-March and ends end of September, beginning of October. Wow, guess what? Just in time for the NFL and college football starting up. So it's a great transition. So if you're somebody who is disillusioned with baseball, you really should consider checking out Australian rules football. And in here, we get a few of the games each week on FS1, FS2, and the rest of them are on Fox Soccer Plus. But it just, what are you thinking? As far as like the thing, you talked about what the game was, but having talked about those, what of those things do you think are the ones that would really transition well, that would get an NFL fan who's not watched it very closely to sit up and take notice?
I think the skills. I think the ability. especially watching, for example, for us being mad Geelong fans, that second and third quarter of the grand final, when Brad Close and the boys were doing those streaming runs out of the half back line with connecting handballs. So for our American listeners, a handball is a clenched fist hitting the back end of the football with an open hand and sort of almost like a shovel pass in gridiron. But some of the boys can handball at 20, 30 yards without even batting an eyelid and hit a guy who's at near full speed on the chest. As a runner, you're allowed to bounce, or you have to bounce the ball about every 8 to 12 steps. I think that equates to about 15 metres of running. And those, when they start connecting handballs and you can move the ball backwards to go forwards, a little bit like rugby, but without the shenanigans of rugby, when that is going and the teams are free-flowing and high-scoring, that's a combination, I think, of some of the college football where, for example, what we saw Georgia do to TCU, just pick the ball up and score. But also, skill set of almost like a baseball infielder, scooping the ball up and getting out a rocket handball. That's almost like a 4-5-3, sort of play, And then when they kick a goal, like I said before, they can kick it from 55 yards out and send it through at 12, 20 metres high. Or 15 yards high into the crowd. You've got 100,000 people at the grand final, 110,000 people, but every week you're getting somewhere between 40 and 70,000 people at a ground watching this religiously. It really is.
Yes.
It is a religious following.
And those of you. And those of you here in the U.S. that don't know about this, the U.S. AFL has been going on now for 25 years, and there are about 50 clubs playing around the United States. So if you live in a major metropolitan area here in the United States, there is probably a club nearby to you. So if you're somebody who played gridiron football going in high school and you're still somebody who's young enough, I don't qualify, and still has that desire to still play a great game, you might want to check out the USAFL's website and find that local club and get yourself hitched up with them, because there's some wonderful people associated with that game all across the United States.
And through Twitter, this has been the one, people obviously have got lots of negative things to say about social media, but this has been fantastic for an Aussie like me who's an NFL nut, who's an AFL nut, who finds like-minded souls like yourself who we can have banter about both sports with equal passion. But then also, as we're talking online, more and more people are going, oh, hang on, what? You guys are talking about Aussie rules and gridiron. Oh, let's sort of join in. So we're getting Australians who are passionate of all clubs. I mean, even in our Browns Backers, so I'm the vice president of the Melbourne Browns Backers Association. We've got on the books about 100 members, but we have a core group of about 10 of us at the moment, and looking to expand that have ties to St Kilda Football Club, Fremantle, believe it or not, Football Club, Western Bulldogs, obviously myself as a Geelong. So, we've got mixed bags, but this is the beauty of it. You can hang a bit of rubbish on one another, but nobody takes it personally.
Right.
It's unlike English soccer where it's very tribal, very much a rival thing. And let's be honest, a 0-0 score at 90 minutes is as boring as watching paint dry.
Yeah,
you never. Yeah. I mean, you might get a score that's tied, but it's like 99 to 99 or 120 to 120.
Exactly.
You're not
exactly.
You're
Still
not
an exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I may anger a few people here, but I'm watching soccer, as I'm going to call it, and you're in Australia and you have the Socceroos, so I think you refer to it as that as well, because you got a couple of other codes of football with rugby, two different codes of rugby in the AFL and or Aussie rules there. I joke with, because I announced the high school football games at the school where I teach. And also the boys and girls soccer. So I've been doing, this will be my 13th or 14th year doing that.
Cool.
But I joke that soccer is a communist sport because they don't let you use all of your body parts.
Yes.
It's thou shalt not use that part.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. It's so I just you're spot on about the scoring on it. I mean, it's exciting to watch the guys going up and down the pitch, and having the great shots on goal, but the keepers are terrific, and it's just there's you're right, there isn't a whole lot of scoring in it, and yes, the skill, I'm not taking away anything from the skill. They are skilled athletes.
No,
they're skilled
absolutely.
athletes, but I'm going to go ahead, and this is a hill I will die on. I think the athletes that play in the AFL are far superior athletes than the top soccer players in the world. I think hands down they are. Hands down they are, and that's a hill I'm willing to die on.
I think you're absolutely right, and if anyone does question it, and they are on the socials, go to any of the AFL teams who are currently pre-season training. Now, remember that the seasons are flipped. So here in Australia, it's summer. We've just had close on a week of, and I'll do it in Fahrenheit because it's easier.
No, you can do it. You can do it in Celsius. I can. Yeah, just tell me, and I'll flip.
Yeah. Well, so it's been ranging between 30, which is about 75.
30 Celsius is about 92 degrees Fahrenheit.
92 up to 40 degrees, which is 100.
Yeah, it's about 110 Fahrenheit. Yeah, so we're talking like Phoenix weather.
Yeah, you're talking absolutely. You're talking Arizona type weather, and the boys have been on the track running, and they are doing their time trials. They are doing some early ball skills, and they are sharpening up their skills essentially. But they are doing it in weather that, from my understanding, from dealing with all my Ohioan friends, you guys get about 2 weeks of that weather, and it's sporadic through the summer.
Yes.
We've had sort of about a week and a half of it bang as a full week and a half of it. So they've been training in that weather, in that heat, and it has, and then the humidity has played a little bit into it. So the fatigue would be, the recovery sessions would be just as important. So I would completely agree with you. Anyone get on Instagram and go to Geelong FC or Hawthorn FC or Essendon FC, whoever you might have an affiliation with. And the other, I suppose, the thing I know you've spoken about it previously is every club has a fantastic theme song.
Yes,
I think that's another pretty cool thing. It's a bit like Rocky Top.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been
that's Virginia or West Virginia University.
The Mountaineers.
They're
the Mountaineers. Yes.
Yeah, they have the Rocky Top song, sort of snare theme.
That's song. That's Tennessee that has Rocky Top. Sorry. Yep. Right next door, though. Right next door.
Tennessee. Yeah. They have that song, and I know Penn State have got their song that they play, and there's a few other teams that are now starting to sort of pick up those third down or 3/4 time songs.
Oh yeah.
If your club wins, the team belts out a song, and some of them are absolute crackers and quite awe-inspiring, I think.
Right. Well, the Cats song has been the alarm on my phone that I've woken up to now for the last 5 years. So that's my alarm. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, we are Geelong. So it every single morning, and you know what? I never miss my alarm.
No, I bet.
I never miss my alarm. Yep.
It is one of those. It is an awe-inspiring song. The other one that you dip your lid to, as we say here, is both North Melbourne and Richmond. They have very awe-inspiring, almost run through the wall type song after. Even though you just played a game at 120 minutes of football, the song is so passionate, and especially if North Melbourne do their long version, which has got a bit at the start, which not a lot of people know about. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, it is very it is something that is unique in footy, because we don't have it here in the United States. As much as people are fans of the NFL and fans of baseball and basketball and in the NHL and that sort of thing, I have said on a number of episodes of the podcast, I believe that there is a true love affair that goes on between AFL club supporters and even I think the other state leagues as well, between those clubs and their supporters. I truly believe there's an absolute love affair that goes on between the two of them, because the clubs they're not privately owned. If you're an NFL fan, the AFL clubs are very much like the Green Bay Packers, where they're owned by, if you will, by the supporters. and they're financed by the supporters' memberships and that type of thing. And
as well as a TV deal and everything.
There's a symbiotic relationship there. And real quickly, as far as the athlete thing, before I forget about this, one of the things that you look at some of these midfielders and such during the course of the game. They wear a GPS device where they track their distance, and some of these players are running 12, 13, 14, 15 kilometers during the course of a game. Who are running anywhere between 6, 8, 9 miles during the course of a game while getting, and I'm going to use a technical term here, getting the shit knocked out of them and getting decleated on a regular basis and getting back up and running some more.
Absolutely. You are 100% correct. They'll get the wind knocked out of them. Mm-hmm. They'll take a 30-second breather, have a drink of water, probably have a quiet spew as well, but then straight back into it. You're absolutely right. Yeah, that 6 to 10 mile that they're running, and they're not doing it necessarily at half rat pace. A lot of it's at half to 3/4 sprint. Never mind the full sprints.
Right.
When they're chasing down people to tackle them, and the tackling. If you're an NFL fan or even an NHL fan, the tackling will get you surely. Mm-hmm. Wrapping these. All these guys are ranging in the sort of 200-pound mark. Of body weight, and they're running equivalent of 4.4s to 5-second 40s, if not less, and they're hitting at full tilt. And when you see it, because they don't wear anything but sleeveless jumpers, apart from our mate Brad Close, who's a full sleeve wearer, when they hit you, actually, it's a bit like a boxer. You see that sweat and perspiration go
fly off of them,
off them, and you go, "Oh, that hurt." Oh, I'm glad they're getting. I'm glad that's not me.
Exactly.
Because I remember getting those hits.
I didn't get a lot of those. I was on the football team when I was in high school, but I was terrible. I was an awful player. I joke with I teach high school, and I coached for a few years as well before I started announcing when my kids were young or before my daughter was born. But I used to joke and tell them that my students that I was so far down on the depth chart that I needed scuba gear. I was terrible. And I've had the children of classmates of mine that I went to school with whose their dads evidently told them different stories about their glory days of playing football in high school. And I'm thinking, man, your dad was just as bad as I was. He was standing on the sidelines right next to me. He never got in the game either.
He was gassing up my cylinder while I was diving.
Yeah, exactly. Good. Yeah. So, what do you think that the AFL could do here? Again, like I said, we'll last year they didn't get any games on until I think round 6. They hadn't worked out. It's like they forgot to do the contract. So there were no games on for like the first 5 weeks of the season, and then. There'll be, like 4 games on, and there might be like an 11:30 p.m. start and a 2 o'clock and then a 5 o'clock. And then maybe the next night there might be another 11 o'clock start, which would, I think, be the Sunday afternoon game.
Yes. Yep.
But they don't advertise, and it's done through Fox Sports here, Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2. They don't advertise the games at all. They don't say, hey, set your DVR, record this to watch later on. I mean, what could the AFL do to be marketing this game better here?
Well, since you asked me about it, I was actually sort of thinking about it. The fact that I don't know if it's made its way to Ohio, but the NFL has decided that Australia is Rams country. So apparently there are talks of a game now. Sadly, it's going to be in Sydney because, as you well know from your discussions with your fellow Americans, they only know Sydney because of the coat hanger that is the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and that's kind of what gets publicised. Yet the vast majority of big sporting events are in Melbourne, but that's a crosstown rivalry or a cross-state rivalry that I have to wear as a cross on my shoulders. But anyway,
right.
So apparently, we're Rams country, and I don't know how quite that all worked out, but I'm presuming it's because it's in LA and the flights are cheap.
Good point. Yeah, it's a nonstop from there. Yeah,
exactly. So this is where the AFL needs to get on board. The AFL, if there is going to be a game with the Rams, whether or not it's a practice game or whatever it is, there needs to be an AFL game before it. That needs to be recorded and put through not FS1 or Fox soccer or whatever it's called. It needs to go on the main Fox channel if Fox is doing it.
Yeah.
Somehow come up with an agreement with either ESPN, CBS, whoever else to get it on there. If it's a pre leading up to that particular game, so that might be just enough to hook things in. The AFL needs to engage, and I know they do sort of at a community level, like you were saying before. There's some kids obviously starting to do Auskick, which is for the little leagues, which is fantastic. Which is where we need to get into, because and this is what would be the big difference. Is it's a bit like soccer for parents if they're worried. Right up until about the under 10s or under 12s, there's no tackling. There's no tackling allowed. So we're protecting the head and neck. We're protecting the kids' well-being, and they're learning lots and lots of skills and teamwork and camaraderie and being part of a team. Even though you were looking after all the diving equipment, still being part of that team is something. I don't know. I think it's character building. It teaches you other things, and Australian rules like a gridiron or American football locker room is a lot of diverse cultures, colours, languages, and religions, and that's where you break down barriers. So it's culturally significant, it's emotionally significant, it's camaraderie, it's respect. You learn obviously the same as with coaches. It's coach. Or Mr. whomever or Mrs. whomever.
Right.
You're learning respect. You're learning to look after one another. You back your teammates. You're learning skills that are invaluable. That's just a humble, grumpy old paramedic's view on the world.
Now, I spoke to somebody last night, and they had a really interesting point on this, and they said that they thought that one of the things that maybe the league should do was to try, as you just said, that that the NFL has decided that Australia is Rams country. Now, I'm guessing that you're going to say thanks, but no thanks. But there may be some people coming to the NFL that haven't, or that are in Australia that maybe have not made the commitment to a club, but they're kind of foisting that club upon Australia, blanketing it there. They actually said something kind of in reciprocal. They basically said that, maybe the AFL should then promote a specific club here to get people on board with a specific club, whether it be a Carlton or a Geelong, or I don't know, if you want to bump up a club, why not a GWS or a Gold Coast?
Correct. Well, see, Gold Coast would be good because you could put it somewhere in one of the cooler climates, not necessarily Ohio, because I'd like Geelong to go there, but that's between you, me, and a gatepost. But you go, Gold Coast, a great holiday destination because the exchange rate is great. It's like Florida without the Floridians.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because again, for those of you here in the United States, again, in Australia, when you retire, you go north to get warm.
Yes. It warms up the arthritis.
Yes.
And don't believe all the TikTok videos where every creature is out to kill you. That's only 97.35% of creatures in Australia are out to kill you. They're not all of them. It's not all of them. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. The water's safe. Don't worry about it.
Watch out for the drop bears. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I'm well versed at the drop bears. Yes, I have a friend that used to. He's now moved inland in Queensland, but he used to live on Russell Island, right off the coast of Brisbane, for a number of years, and he's now moved inland a few hundred kilometers. But he used to joke about the drop bears and that sort of thing. And he sent me videos of people getting duped into looking out for the drop bears and that sort of thing. But it's. As I've said in the other discussions I've had here, if the league, if the AFL could just figure out how to get 1% of us interested, 1% of us is 10% of Australia's population.
Correct.
And think about what that could mean to merchandising, international memberships, all of those resources could then be turned around to, establishing new clubs, Tassie, Darwin, putting together an actual stadium where they could play the game during the season in Darwin without people dropping like flies and having to spend halftime in a refrigerator.
Correct. Yes. Absolutely. 100%.
Concussion research, things of that, growing the game at the local level. There's so many things they could do with it.
Even just general injury and rehab. There is advancement. And then television negotiation rights become more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that 1% grows to 1.5% to 2% over two decades, all of a sudden, plus you throw in, like I said, the Oz kick, and then you start getting these grassroots game growing, mm-hmm. You've now got another pool to draw on for your draft.
That's true too. Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah. Yeah,
and you've got the other overall things of general safety and well-being of living in Australia.
Right.
Because won't go down all those paths, but you know what I'm.
But there's a lot of for those of you here in the U.S., there are quite a few athletes in the AFL and in the women's comp. We haven't even mentioned the AFLW, who have come over from playing Gaelic football in Ireland.
Yes.
So that comp translates pretty well to Aussie rules. I don't think the tackling is involved there, but it's not
quite
the bumping
ferocious.
is there. Yeah. Yes. But this is just it's a dynamic game. And I have said time and time again that I think it's the greatest game on the planet. I know that somebody I talked to last night, and I've heard the term before, they talk about it being aerial ping pong. And they said that's usually coming from the rugby states. And I said, well, it's because usually rugby players don't have any kind of a vertical leap. They can get 2-3 centimeters off the ground. That's it. So they're just jealous of the aerial ping pong.
Correct.
I can get like one sheet of paper underneath my vertical, folded in half, mind you.
That's right. It's like a pizza menu. Pizza menu.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is too. The high flying marks. Now they're not as prevalent these days, but when they happen, as we call them, a specky or a screamer, the crowds erupt. You're mm-hmm. talking about a 6'2" bloke flying on the back or shoulders of another 6'2" bloke and hanging onto the football, coming mm-hmm. down with it.
Right.
They only need to go through YouTube and have a look. Your American listeners that might be have not been so familiar with the game, but all they need to do is look at Aussie rules or AFL and then big marks, big tackles, and you'll see 100 videos pop up in a nanosecond, and you will see what the game's about. Now, the game that some of the games you might watch from the 70s and 80s, the skill level has increased exponentially. But the biffo, as we like to call it, the violence has subsided.
Yes, that's one of the things I was going to ask you is if you were to recommend to an NFL fan, and they could probably find the game, they could probably find that game on YouTube. Is there a game that stands out to you where you would say, watch this game as a good introductory? And I would say probably not the 1989 Grand Final.
As sad and as traumatic as that is for me, that was a brilliant game. That was a brilliant game of football.
It was. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, you had the first 10 seconds, you got somebody, just getting punched and knocked out. Somebody.
Mark Yates taking it. Was it a Dipper or Dermy? I think it might have been Mark Yates.
It was Dermy because Dipper ended up with a collapsed lung, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yeah. Had a punctured lung, and this is the difference. These blokes were genuine hard nuts.
Mm-hmm.
They were as tough as nails. They're in the same category as your Reggie Whites, your Clay Matthews, your Chris Spielman. Those sorts of real hard nut linebacker type DN type blokes. That they were the enforcers on the team. And if I could think of some of the hockey players I watched way back when. That's the same sort of thing. They were the enforcers of the Hawthorn
Football Club. Can't help you there with hockey. Yeah, and the thing is, they're doing it without pads on.
Correct.
Yes.
But I think for like high skill, fast moving game, the first half to 3/4 of last year's grand final, I think even the grand final, sadly, that we lost against Richmond,
mm-hmm.
was it 18-19?
That was 2020.
2020 up in Queensland. That's right.
Yep.
That was a high skill, fast moving, good game of football with some big tackles.
Right.
What was it? 1992 Geelong v Essendon at the MCG. Gary Ablett, I was at that game. That's why I can't remember if it was 91 or 92. Paul Salmon kicked 9 goals in a winning team. Ablett Senior kicked 11 or 12 in a losing team. And in one of the goals he kicks, I had hair back then. He kicks kind of a banana around the corner and ends up on his bum and back and his arms in the air, and you can see me and my group of mates just behind him in the forward pocket of the old Great Southern Stand at the MCG, and that was a cracking game. That was a wet weather game, so there was a fair bit of mud around. Again, high flying, good skills. Yeah. So those are sort of a couple of games that you can sink your teeth into.
Yeah, there's so many, and I'm going to put in the show notes for all the episodes with regards to this group of episodes. I am going to put some links to some YouTube videos that you may want to check out in terms of just seeing what the game is all about, because I know that that the AFL they're geared towards Australia because it's your game.
Yes.
We're just hoping to to be able to share a little bit of it, not to commandeer it. That's not my that's not my desire at all. It's just I'm wanting to tell my fellow Americans, and I'm kind of pointing off the side like, see this is awesome. And if you saw it, and if you're an NFL fan, and if you like soccer, because I've called it a combination of American football, rugby, soccer, cross-country running, basketball, mixed martial arts, and calculus. And calculus.
And calculus, absolutely, yes. Yeah, it's funny. There was back in the 70s and 80s, there was a fantastic commentators that most of them have sadly passed, but they were my generation of callers. And one of the famous ones, I'm almost certain it was either a bloke by the name of Harry Beitzel or famous Captain Blood Jack Dyer, who was a Richmond legend, Richmond captain. There was a player who kicked a goal, and his response was, and it might have even been Peter Dacos, to be honest. He's kicked it on such a tight angle, the ball's been stuck between the goalposts. And that's your geometry, trigonometry, and everything else. The angle. It looks like, because the ball's spinning on a flat, and the way it curves is almost like a slider or a knuckleball in some regards.
Yeah, it is. It is an absolutely wonderful game. Now, if you were tasked by Gil on his way out, Gil McLaughlin, the leader of the AFL, the commissioner. I can't remember he's not the president of the AFL, is he? What do they call him?
I think he's the CEO.
Chair, the CEO. Yeah, the CEO of the AFL.
CEO,
but he's on his way out. He's going to be replaced here maybe soon, because I keep hearing rumblings that he's gonna head up to get things together for the Olympics. Have you been hearing those rumblings?
Yeah, that's been around, and then there was something else he was going to
Commonwealth Games.
Possibly fix it. Might be, it was one of them. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But if you're tasked by the AFL to solve the America problem in terms of getting more eyes on the game, what would be the top 3 things that you would put on your list that you would present to them?
I think make it more accessible, insofar as with a TV channel. I don't know how many subscribers those particular services have, and it becomes an interesting now prospect with the fact of Amazon Prime TV taking off here. Could there be some sort of collab like what they did with the NFL over there, going on that? Make it more accessible. Introduce it to the schools. Offer it like the Auskick as an introductory to the schools. Pick out. I don't know, 20 or 30 schools in each state that have got half reasonable facilities, and even some of the places that are lower socioeconomic, because money doesn't. You don't need much to do
the
to play Aussie
the equipment
rules.
for this kind of a game is significantly reduced. Yes,
cheap. You literally, I mean, you don't need the jerseys that the team's got. You could literally have a black T-shirt and a white T-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
There's your two teams. You know, you can go to Walmart, I'm sure, and get one for $1 a T-shirt.
Yeah.
When the weather's fine, you don't need football cleats. You can just use runners. Like during the pre-season at the moment, the boys are all in runners 99% of the time because the grounds are as rock hard anyway. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah. So you can get away with it quite cheaply. All you mm-hmm. need is someone then on the school grounds with the drive and the passion to take these kids, boys and girls. And again, this is what makes it great.
Right.
There's no dissemination. When I was coaching Auskick with my little fella, who's now 9, mm-hmm. We had 30 or 40 boys and about 10 girls. This is 3 or 4 years ago. This is pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And it was growing. And it's just that, like, his old team has 2 girls teams. So mm-hmm. there's no issue of letting your girl play. Like, there's some fantastic women footballers that are getting around in lower grades that are now being looked at by the AFL club. So, it's got such a potential for a little growth. And if you get the kids involved, well, mum and dad want to know what's going on. What are you doing?
Right.
Why are you kicking that oblong ball? Why aren't you throwing? Oh, we don't throw. We handball. Yeah. All of a sudden, mum or dad's in the backyard or in the front yard, and you get the little kids playing kick to kick in the street like I did growing up. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, I was lucky that, I grew up like yourself in a much calmer and quieter time, and I grew up in a dead-end street, but we had all the neighbourhood kids come around on their bikes and we'd play kick to kick.
Right.
For hours on end. And that's just as fun as that, because you're honing your skills there.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, it's...
Even the balls are not that expensive.
Yeah. I mean, I have up here, I have a 2011 signed ball that somebody sent me, and I've got a Cats ball that I bought. And up at the top, it's not a Sharon, it's a Burley. I'm sorry, but it was inexpensive. But yeah. And then I have one from a gentleman by the name of Michael Gallus, who works for an organization or runs an organization called Footies for All, who donates balls and cleats and that sort of thing. He's in Melbourne, but he donates balls and cleats and such all over for soccer, basketball, footy, all over the world. And he's an absolute hero, in my opinion. Yeah, absolute wonderful man.
Well, and the kids, for example, here in Australia, when they sign up to Auskick, they get a little welcome pack, and one of the items in the welcome pack is a kid's size footy.
Right.
So it's a bit like basketball. There's 4, 5, 6.
Sizes.
It's the size is the right size for their little hands.
Yeah.
So they don't get overwhelmed and scared by the size of an adult ball. It is quite. Look, it's not cheap. We know that. The whole concept of the thing isn't going to be cheap. Yeah. But like you said, you get that 1% with the potential of 1% growth every decade in viewership.
Yeah.
It becomes quite economical.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. That's a great point.
And I think, let's be honest, it's across all organisations, from government to private, a lot of people can't see the forest for the trees.
I think you're right there. I think you're right. It's
We've always done it this way.
Mm-hmm.
We can only do it this way. Well, we know that that's not right.
Yeah, I mean, look at what baseball's doing to their rules. Of course, they can change them. Not necessarily for the better, but they can certainly change them.
Correct.
Yeah,
it's called an amendment for a reason.
Yeah. So before we wrap up here, and back in 2020, before COVID hit, there was actually supposed to be a game for points here, because Essendon and GWS were supposed to come play in Los Angeles. And maybe that was the arrangement that was worked out, because I guess that Sydney game with the Rams is supposed to take place in 2024.
I believe so, yes.
From what I've heard. Again, I don't know. I haven't seen anything about that, because Daz that I talked to last night mentioned that to me. So that was the first I'd heard about that.
That's why Cole Brandt was out here late last year. That was the start of the launch. And then there's a whole lot of stuff on, I think it's ESPN Australia with NFL Australia, and they do make mention of, as I said, Rams country and all this. And I can tell you that the Browns Backers boys up in Sydney and obviously the Melbourne group were far from impressed. And there was a bit of a bombardment of tweets saying,
from you guys?
Melbourne and Ohio, or Melbourne and Cleveland are far more alike than LA and Sydney,
Yeah, and again, I've only been to LA a couple times, and I get to Cleveland on a somewhat regular basis. But I of course I haven't been to an Indians or Guardians game in, gosh, it's been probably 4 or 5 years now. I mean, I used to take my son. I used to take my son all the time, but he played. He played the travel baseball, which and that's one of the other things about the game, as I'd mentioned to you before we started recording, about how you have the local communities that have the local footy club that's for that suburb or that small town, and that is the hub around which the whole wheel of that town rolls. And
very much so in country.
Absolutely, we don't have that here. Yes, no. you might have a like a little league baseball league where all the kids get together and play, but they're not playing for like the same club. They're playing against one another, which is certainly okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as kids get older, they might begin to specialize. But you might play AAU basketball where you're playing. It might be 2 of you from this school, 2 from this school, 3 from here, and you go and you play in like a summer league, or you play travel baseball like my son did. Because my son told me when he was 9, he played in the local league up until he was 9, and he came home one day, and he said to me, "Dad, I like my friends, but I don't want to play baseball with them anymore." Which I was like, okay. He said, because I don't care what the snack is after the game. Because that was his way of telling me I want something more competitive than just going out and goofing around. So, he ended up, he then played another, while he was in, middle school and high school and that sort of thing, the last couple of years of elementary school, he played like 9 years of travel baseball along with the high school baseball team as well. He played on the club team at college. He didn't have the time to try out for the actual school team, but as he said, at the school he went to, he said the club team was actually better than the school's team anyway. We drove.
We would drive here in the suburb. At the end of my street, I have a football club, a cricket club, and a baseball club. All at the end of my street. So my kids could go from Auskick through to veterans. So there's a veterans team as well, so for over 35s. And then hang on, what is it, the Super Rules and then veterans. So like Super Rules is I think 35 to 45 or 44, and then 45 plus is veterans. And there's blokes that were running around there in their early to mid 50s still getting a kick on a Sunday afternoon. I think they play like 10-minute quarters, but they're running around playing a kick, and
they're still doing it.
Still doing it. And same with the baseball club. The baseball club has 4 or 5 adult teams, and the fourths and the fifths are either the juniors that are showing a little bit of promise, so they get a bit of mentoring and coaching from all the old crusty blokes, or they're the old crusty blokes like me and you that want to retire but still want to have a hit on a casual. And I think they play 4 innings.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 or 5 innings. So it's not even a stressful. Maybe for 2 hours. Just a window. However many innings you get in 2 hours, done.
Yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, it's So before we wrap up, are the Browns making the playoffs next year?
Can I sit tight and wait and see what happens in the draft and off season? Sure. Because we have got a lot to do.
Yeah.
We need to sort out our secondary. We need to sort out our D tackle issue.
Yes.
We need some linebackers, and we need a pop the top off at receiver. Because sadly, I don't think Schwartz is the guy.
I don't think so either. I mean, I don't think he.
Now, he might be good, as I've heard and seen on the special teams as a gunner, because he's got that speed. He can get down and he can obviously block. But let's be honest, we're not going to pay millions of dollars for a gunner.
No, we can go. They can find somebody that's an undrafted free agent and bring them in for that purpose. There, he's
correct.
He I believe that he went to. I don't know if you're familiar with this boxer, but the Roberto Duran school of pass catching skills. Because they used to call him Hands of Stone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And his thing, he got beat. I don't remember if it was Thomas Hearns or Sugar Ray Leonard that beat him, but he's puts his hands up in the fight and no mas. So I think we're kind of at that point now with young Mr. Schwartz. No mas. We don't want any more. Just
No.
go see if you can still train and be a track star. And this was a nice novelty. I don't think he's going to get another contract this year after this one runs out.
No, because I think what have we got him? We got him for 2 years as a third round or fourth round.
Yeah, I think they've got him. They took him in the third. I think they've got him for at least another year after this one, I believe. So, yeah.
Unless he's spent some time down here in Australia with blokes like Adam Gilchrist and all that sort of stuff, learning how to catch. Yeah, I don't think he's or he has to go and find some of that old 1970s stickum.
Yes,
from the Raiders.
Yeah, which they could. I mean, they have the gloves that the kids wear that are really, really sticky, and I don't know if he just, I don't know if he just chooses not to wear those. If he left them out in the rain, I'm not sure what he did with them, but it's just. It
also helps to have your eyes open when you catch the ball. But anyway, that's just a by.
This is true. And again, I was a terrible player. He has made it to the NFL, so I can't denigrate him too much.
No.
I didn't make it off the bench on my team. I joked when I was coaching. We went back to play. There were the school that I went to is across town from where I teach. I actually live in that school district, but we went back to play the other school that shares their field with them, and we were walking with our gear to the visitors' sideline. One of the other coaches and I were walking over there, and I told him, I said, I was on the team here for 4 years. This is the most time I ever spent on this field, just walking to the other side.
Not even in warm-ups.
Not even, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was just, I was bad. I was bad. I'm glad that I did it, but I was terrible. And I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not ashamed to say it. It is what I was. It just was, I didn't have my heart in it at all at that point in time.
And that's the thing too. But with Aussie rules is that and that's the thing, different sizes. We've gone away. We seem to go through. I was actually thinking about this before. We went through a period of almost every player looked like every other player. They were all 6 foot to 6'2", between 75 and 90 kilos.
Right.
And now we've actually gone back to some small forwards. We've gone back to big ruckman. We've gone back to some big, well-built, solid centre half and centre half back and centre half forward type players that are your Hardman. You've gone to speedy wingers and all this sort of stuff. So even kids that are doubting themselves for their query lack of skill could actually be very good Aussie rules footballers because the skill sets are different and they might actually have a good eye-hand coordination, i.e., as I was saying before, handballs.
Right.
And then they can learn the kicking skills, or they might be a good kicker. They can learn the hand skills.
Right.
They might have great aerobic capacity. They can learn the other skills. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
this is another positive for the fact that and it's 18 aside, and you need 22 on a team anyway because you've got 4 interchange.
Mm-hmm. And one sub
emergency.
now. Yeah, but not a medical sub now. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see how they deploy that person this year. When we did the Sydney preview, I was talking with the folks from Bevy of Bloods podcast, and we talked about how are they going to rest Buddy Franklin, and I said, well, I have a feeling with this new rule with the sub, I mean, you might find a situation where if the Swans are up by 4 or 5 or 6 goals at halftime, Buddy might get the second half of that game off, and they might bring the sub on to help keep him fresh for the next week.
Yes. Yeah, get as much out of those old legs as they can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or if they're down by 40 points, drag him.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I didn't want to use the other side of the coin with the Swan supporters, especially after what was the score of that game? It was there it is. It's 133-52. Yes, for those of you that don't know, that was the grand final score that the Cats beat the Swans last year. So,
and let's be honest, that 52 shouldn't have been 52, but like a lot of sports, there was some junk time points scored.
Yes, there was.
Yeah.
So, if somebody is in the Melbourne area and wants to get involved with the Browns Backers, how do they go about doing that?
They can reach out to through the Cleveland Browns website. There's a link in the actual website to find a local Browns Backers, and that sends an email to. Or if they're on the socials, we have a Twitter account that's at capital M, capital T, Own. So it's M-Town Browns 1. So it's capital M, capital T, OWN, capital B, Browns number 1, and that's our Twitter account. So they can reach out to that.
Okay.
And then we have also got a Facebook group that is, funnily enough, is just Browns Backers Melbourne on Facebook, and it's got the international Browns Backers logo, which is Brownie the Elf with the big shield, and
cool.
And the dog pound backing as the logo. So yeah, they can reach out to any of those ones and go from there.
Outstanding.
And then we'll bring them into the group. We have a WhatsApp group as well, and we've got stuff that we're planning for. We try and have a lunch once a month, and those that can make it go, those that can't, or those that can't don't.
Well, with the way the schedule and the terms of the times the games are played, you guys generally don't get together to watch the games, do you?
They have.
Okay.
With my roster, because I do a strange roster with my career. The boys have met, but we do and have met for our lunchtime games. So, or lunchtime in Australia, because most of the games are about 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock a.m. Melbourne time, Monday morning for the 1:30 Sunday games. But for example, we had a bit of a shindig. The Baltimore Ravens, Cleveland Browns Monday night game, the one that was 37-42, where Lamar had the accident.
Yeah.
But then somehow we lost that game as well. So we do those sorts of games that end up, like the Halloween game. The boys all met up. I was working, unfortunately, but the boys all met up for beers and food at a pub, and we move around pubs because we don't actually have a Browns Backers bar per se.
Okay.
And the fact that in Melbourne, and anyone from Melbourne listening knows, is we have a fantastic public transport system. The trains run into the centre of the city, but they've also got great peripheral suburbs with great pubs. And if we can organise with some of the pubs, we ring ahead and they'll go, yeah, come on in, and we'll bring in half a dozen, 10 blokes in, and they're happy because they'll spend a ton of money on it over the bar. And we're just looking to grow it and make it more of a traditional Browns Backers, where we're going to start to try and raise some funds for some charity work, do some charity work to really get the name out there and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, we've got a couple of charities in mind that we're going to work with, and yeah.
Outstanding. Well, Dave, this has been an absolute pleasure, sir, and I'm hoping that we get some more. I hope we get some more people involved with the game here in the States. And I wish you all the best, and of course, I hope your teams do well this year.
You too, my friend. You too.
Yeah. Well, again, my guest has been Dave Evans Smith from Melbourne, the Melbourne Browns Backers. And Dave, thanks so much for sitting down and chatting with me. I truly, truly appreciate it, sir.
Craig, thanks, mate. You're a legend. Keep up the great work.
Cheers to you. All right, David. Hey, man, thanks for sitting down to talk with me. I know we trade lots of messages and such back and forth over on Twitter, and it's always great chatting with you, and it was great to actually chat with you in person from 15,000 kilometers away, and I would be remiss if I didn't say, go Browns. Now, ladies and gentlemen, remember that you can find everything about my podcast over at my website, ayankonthefooty.com. If you go over there, I do hope you'll get on the mailing list. So when new episodes come out, they'll be in your inbox about 45 seconds after they've been released. If you enjoy the podcast, I hope you'll click on that review button up at the top and share a review for the podcast. You can either do it at Apple Podcasts, I think Spotify as well, or right there on the website. Helps to trigger that algorithm and get it in front of more ears. And if you want to help out the show monetarily, you certainly can do that. You can click on that little Buy Me a Coffee button in the bottom left-hand corner. That helps keep the lights on, paying for all the fees and such to to run the show. I don't have a Patreon, so I don't put anything behind a paywall or anything like that. Everything that I produce goes out for everybody to hear. And if you got an idea for a guest for a podcast, if you're an NFL fan who may be new to the AFL, or you may be interested in learning more about the AFL, reach out. I'd love to talk to you about it. I'd love to share with you my love for the game, and maybe that might help to garner an interest in you as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, look out for one another. Check on your friends, make sure they're okay. Let them know you're okay. If you need to talk to somebody, please reach out to them, talk to them. I have numbers for organizations like Beyond Blue and that sort of thing in my show notes. And if you need to do so, please reach out to those people. Also, if you are here as an NFL fan and you are curious about the AFL, there is a Google Doc that I have linked in the show notes that has about a dozen different YouTube videos about the game, a couple introductory ones explaining the game a little bit, and then showing some great goals, great marks, catches, if you will, speckies, as well as the video of last year's grand final, think Super Bowl. And spoiler alert, my team won. And I'm pretty stoked about that. But again, look out for each other, folks. Let everybody know that you care. All right? And I appreciate all of the kind words from each and every one of you that have reached out. It truly means the world to me. This labor of love that I'm doing here with your wonderful game, I appreciate you being so accepting of me, and I can't thank you enough for that. And if you're new to the podcast, I close out each episode the same way. Ladies and gentlemen, may your dribble kick never hit the post. I will catch you later. This has been episode 245 of A Yank on the Footy. Don't forget that you can reach me at yank_on Twitter, or to yankonthefooty@gmail.com. A Yank on the Footy podcast on Facebook. A Yank on the Footy on Instagram. You can find my name, Craig Wessels, on Facebook as well as on LinkedIn as well if you want to connect over there. I do hope that you'll share the episode with your friends and family. And if I've piqued your interest, if you're new to the game, take a look through my catalog of now close to 300 episodes, and there's some great interviews with some wonderful people who have been involved with the game at the local level, at the highest level, from people who are overseeing local footy clubs to team presidents to super agents to former players. It's just I'm going to use one of those 25-cent vocab words, a cornucopia of guests. Okay, ladies and gents, I do appreciate you tuning in, and until next time, goodbye.